Dear listeners, as we gather for this episode of Hikes and Mics, our hearts are heavy with the recent events unfolding in Southern California. The devastating wildfires have ravaged beloved landscapes, destroyed homes, and most tragically claimed lives. To all those affected, the families mourning loved ones, individuals who lost their homes, and communities facing the aftermath, we extend our deepest sympathies and unwavering support. The magnitude of this disaster is profound. In these trying times, it's essential to come together as a community. Many of you have reached out asking how you can assist those impacted. Please check out the episode show notes to learn more about how you can help out the individuals and communities impacted by these fires. To those on the front lines, the brave firefighters, first responders, and volunteers, your courage and dedication do not go unnoticed. Your tireless efforts to protect our communities and natural spaces are deeply appreciated. In the face of such adversity, it's natural to feel overwhelmed. Remember, it's okay to seek support, lean on one another, and take time to heal. Our trails and mountains have always been symbols of resilience and strength. Together as a community, we will navigate this challenging path and emerge stronger. Stay safe, take care of each other, and let's continue to support those in need during this critical time. Hey everyone, it's Ivan, the host of the Hikes and Mics podcast. I'm so excited to welcome you to this very special episode. It's been 2 years since my last solo episode, and I can't tell you how incredible it feels to reconnect with you all in this way. First, I want to take a moment to thank every single one of you, our amazing listeners and guests, for your continued support over the last 2.5 years. Whether you've been here from the start or just found the podcast, you've helped this community grow in ways I've never imagined. And to the guests who shared their inspiring stories and experiences, thank you for being the heart of this podcast. Now, I know many of you were eagerly awaiting Season 9, and I want to be transparent about why it was delayed. The start of 2025 has been a challenging time for some of my closest friends and family, and I felt it was important to step back and be present for them during those difficult moments. Life has a way of reminding us what truly matters, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to offer my support when it was needed the most. But now, I'm back, and I'm ready to dive into this season with you all. In this episode, I'll be reflecting on the growth of the podcast, the adventures I've had, and the lessons I've learned along the way. Plus, we're looking ahead to what's in store for 2025. Trust me, it's going to be an epic year for the Hikes and Mics community. So grab your favorite trail snack or beverage, and let's jump into it. Thank you for being there. It truly means the world to me. Now let's get started. Welcome everyone to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mics podcast. It's your host Ivan, and we're going to be kicking off Season 9 with a solo episode. It's been exactly 2 years since I recorded my last solo episode, and a lot has changed over those 2 years. The community has grown. We've got new listeners, and we've had some amazing guests over the last 2 years, some of whom I've had the opportunity to meet in person. I just wanted to use this episode to reintroduce myself to our new listeners, as well as provide an update of what's happened over the last 2 years, not just with the podcast, but with my own personal hiking experiences. So the way we're going to do this is, for our new listeners, I'm going to introduce myself and give you a little background on my hiking experience and journey. Then we're going to recap both 2023 and 2024, and also share what's coming up in 2025 and answer some of the community questions that got submitted on Instagram. My name is Ivan Orozco. I am based out of the Pacific Northwest in Washington State. I'm in Central Washington on the eastern side of the Cascades. The way I describe my local hiking scene and trails is it closely resembles Flagstaff, Arizona, more so than what you typically picture when you think of Washington State or the Pacific Northwest. We're a high desert. If it wasn't for irrigation, we would be very much a desert here in eastern Washington. The beauty of it is the Cascades are less than half an hour away from me. I can drive less than 15 minutes east and hit the National Forest. 45 minutes in the summer will get me to Mount Rainier. So I kind of get the best of both worlds. I get some high desert trails in the fall, winter, and early spring. And then I get the mountains in the summer and early fall. I've been really lucky to be able to explore large portions of our state. My first experience was right after I graduated high school. A couple of good friends and I decided to climb a local mountain called Clemens Mountain, which you can see from where we grew up. It's not terribly tall. I think it's maybe 5,000 to 6,000 feet, but it is a grind to summit. The thing that got me was the multiple false summits. I kept thinking we were at the top, and nope, there's just another steeper hill awaiting you. And once you make it to the top of that, there's another one that's awaiting you. So it really demoralized me and kind of put me off hiking. It wasn't until I moved back to Washington from college. One of those same friends that took me on that eventful hike in high school was now working for the local Forest Service. He was doing a lot of trail maintenance and also part of the fire crews that do preventative burns in and around our local national forest. I shared with him that I was looking at getting back into hiking. Since he spends 5-6 days out on the trails, he would be able to give me some good suggestions on where to start. He redeemed himself from the first hike and he took me on a waterfall hike that instantly got me hooked. It's still one of my favorite hikes and waterfalls to visit. That's Union Creek Falls. It's only about a mile to reach the main waterfall from the trailhead. It's a beautiful 80-foot cascading waterfall with multiple viewpoints. That hike definitely motivated me to explore more and become a little bit of a waterfall chaser. I think the first year and a half, I was chasing waterfalls, going into the Columbia Gorge, doing the beautiful Eagle Creek Trail. That helped me really fall in love with hiking. I really kind of stuck to the Central Cascades. I did make it up to North Cascades National Park. I made it out to Rainier a few times. I didn't make it up to the Enchantments, but we made it up to Kolchak. Now, for most of the 2010s, I lived in Hawaii and continued to hike and explore. That was one of the few free things that you can do on the island. A lot of my friends and coworkers, that's what we would do on our weekends, explore some of the hikes and trails in and around Oahu. I was spoiled in the Pacific Northwest with maintained trails. It wasn't until I moved to Hawaii where some of the trails were not well maintained. I know nowadays there are some amazing coalitions and groups restoring a lot of the trail systems on the island. Shout out to the Coconut Coalition. But it definitely helped me grow as a hiker as far as my capabilities, getting a little bit more comfortable with rock scrambling, climbing, and heights. Some of those ridge hikes, you're teetering with 100-foot drops on either side. Definitely did my fair share of waterfall chasing there. And then at the start of the pandemic, I moved to Tempe, Arizona, and lived there for about 2 years. I love Phoenix. I love Arizona. I didn't know how to deal with the summer. A lot of people would go up north to Flagstaff, Prescott, Payson to kind of escape the heat, but a lot of valley residents would do that. So a lot of the trails would sometimes get crowded, especially in popular places like Flagstaff and Sedona. It was hard to not be able to hike locally during the summer months unless you woke up really early to beat the heat. And even that, you're still dealing with 90-degree weather in the early morning hours, but definitely miss it. I still have my bucket list destinations and hikes that I want to do there in Arizona throughout the coming years. And at the start of 2022, I moved back to Washington State. I still had friends and family in the area, but they scattered across the region, and it made me get back into solo hiking. On those solo hikes, I'd come across random strangers and individuals, whether it was at the trailhead or at the summit, and just have some, good 10-15 minute conversations with them about their hiking experiences, the trail, and the surrounding areas. That's what sparked the idea for the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I was wishing there was a way to capture those moments because unless you exchanged contact information, a lot of the times you just don't see those individuals that you meet on the trail. And originally I was going to do it as a blog, and I figured it would probably be best to record that conversation in order to be able to transcribe it and develop a blog post about it. And that's what kind of led me down the path of recording equipment for podcasting, and that got me intrigued. Maybe I could do it as a podcast. And for those that listened to the first couple episodes, I ended up literally hauling a recording studio onto the trails, which included a table, stools, mics and mic stands, all in with all the cases and everything. I was packing about 25 pounds of recording equipment, not including food, water, or any of my 10 essentials. I loved doing that. I did that for 3 episodes, but we had a really really weird fall in 2022 where I remember being up on Mount Rainier the first week of October in a tank top and shorts because it was like 80 degrees up there. And then a few days after that, a big snowstorm came and dumped on the mountains, ultimately closing down the pass, which is one of the ways I access the national park from the east side. I figured it would be tough for me to be able to conduct an interview in the cold, not moving around. I imagine it would be the same for our guests. So I was going to pause the podcast and restart it in the spring once things melted and things warmed up. By then, I had started to follow some amazing individuals on Instagram. I figured maybe I can reach out to some of these amazing hikers and see if they'd be interested in sharing their story virtually during the winter months. Some of the first people I reached out to were Grant from Gallivanting with Grant on Instagram and Sarah from The Wild Compiled on Instagram. They were my first virtual guests. Sarah was from Washington State and Grant was from Southern California. I had a really great experience with them that kind of helped me pivot into the direction that the podcast is currently in. That's interviewing folks from across the United States and even outside of the United States. It was really a blessing in disguise. I've been able to do some on-the-trail recording and record in person this year. I'm proud to say that my recording studio is now less than 2 pounds, and I'm looking forward to continuing that in 2025. This has been an amazing ride, and the community has been so supportive. It's just an awesome community to be a part of. I've made some really great friends and connections with not just guests, but listeners and community members. I'm hoping to continue that in 2025. But yeah, that's a little bit about me and my journey. The next section, we're going to recap 2023 and 2024, give you a rundown on some of the memorable highlights and destinations. In 2023, after seeing it on Instagram, I decided to participate in the 52 Hikes Challenge. I definitely recommend participating in that challenge if you haven't done it before. One thing that surprised me is it helped me not only cross off hikes that had been on my to-do list, also helped me discover new trails and new hikes that weren't on my radar. And it came from trying to find new hikes in order to achieve this 52 Hikes Challenge. So definitely recommend it. One thing that helped me do was participate in snowshoeing. I ended up doing a twilight tour up at White Pass, which is my local ski resort. And it was a perfect day. They took us around a lake, connected us on the PCT, and just had an absolute great time. Some other memorable highlights were exploring more of Eastern Washington. Believe it or not, there are random sand dunes in Eastern Washington. One of my favorite ones was White Bluffs, which is next to the Hanford Reach nuclear site. It can be a little concerning being so close to a nuclear site, but an absolutely beautiful hike. Not only do you have the sand dunes, but you have amazing rock formations and cliffs right next to the Columbia River. You're a couple hundred feet above the Columbia River, but you can go down. Just a really cool landscape in Eastern Washington. Definitely recommend it if you ever make it out to that part of the state. And after, speaking with Gallivanting with Grant about Valley of Fire, I was able to cross that state park off my list in 2023. To this day, I still think it rivals a lot of national parks. Maybe not necessarily in size, but the beauty and incredible rock formations is truly a gem when it comes to state parks and just parks in general. Another big trip in 2023 was going to Utah. When I was living in Arizona, I made it up to Bryce Canyon, and I've said this numerous times, but Utah as a state could be a national park. Some of their state parks would rival some national parks, I believe. The Utah trip came about from seeing videos and pictures of these unique rock spires out in Hanksville. They're still kind of a little under the radar in 2023. I had to do some Googling and researching to find the coordinates. I'm pretty sure they're out there. I think it's been tagged on Google Maps now. It's just some really unique rock spires that look out of this world. While that was the main goal, driving down to Hanksville, of course, I had to hit up Capitol Reef National Park. That was truly amazing. Then traveled west to Moab, hit up Arches National Park and Canyonlands National Park. Really loved those parks. I kind of fell in love with Moab and just exploring some of the side roads that led outside of town through some amazing canyons and rock formations. Delicate Arch is definitely iconic, but I think Corona Arch outside of Moab is one of my favorites. We were able to have it for a good 15-20 minutes to ourselves while we were there, and just as beautiful as some of the arches that you see in the national park. Definitely recommend it. And then when I came back from that Utah trip, another highlight that I wanted to make part of the 52 hike challenge was going down to the Columbia Gorge during wildflower season and hitting up some of the local state parks and viewpoints that are just world famous for the wildflowers in the spring. And it didn't disappoint. It's crazy. Outside of the springtime, the hills are just bare and dry, but during a few short weeks in spring, they are just bursting with color. Definitely recommend going to the Columbia River Gorge in the springtime to catch the wildflowers, as well as the incredible waterfalls that the gorge is also known for. Now, some unexpected things happened in 2023. I'd always been a day hiker. I've done some camping, some car camping, doing that kind of stuff, but I never did backpacking. And in 2023, after nearly 10 years of trying for the enchantments permit through the lottery system, I finally got a permit. Now, it wasn't for the Corps, it was for Kolchak, but I figured it was definitely important to be able to get some backpacking trips before the enchantments. And it was a really beautiful full circle moment because Sarah, who was my first virtual guest from season 2, episode 1. Her and her husband took me on my first backpacking trip into the North Cascades, and to be able to hear her experiences on the episode, along with some other amazing backpackers like Kelly from Nevada and Tammy, their stories definitely got me interested in backpacking. But yeah, it was really great to be able to share my first backpacking experience with Sarah and her husband. It was definitely a learning lesson, like my first time hiking. I became dehydrated. I thought I was drinking enough water, but I definitely was not. And I had electrolyte packets. I was drinking water from my reservoir throughout the hike, but I just wasn't drinking enough. But can't thank Sarah and her husband enough for inviting me on that trip. And I was able to repay the favor by having her and her husband join me on the enchantments, and also Tammy from Tammy on the Trail. She was able to come out and backpack with us. I also recruited a couple of my longtime friends from high school and college to join, and it was just a really great experience to bring 7 other individuals to not only camp at Kolchak, but then go into the core zone on one of the days. It definitely made me realize that I will only go up Asgard Pass. I will never go down it again, because it definitely took longer to come down it than it did going up. I think I'll just do the traverse from here on out, but truly an amazing experience. Towards the end of the year, the 52 hike challenge got me to go a little bit further east near the Snake River in Washington State to Devil's Canyon. And it's an old railroad system that they converted to a trail. And there's a series of tunnels that you can hike through, one of them being over a mile long. And I did that as my Halloween weekend hike. And it was a little spooky being in the tunnels all by myself, especially that mile long one. Definitely recommend the Columbia Plateau Trail. But yeah, 2023 was an awesome year, not just for me personally hiking, but also the podcast. Some incredible guests from all over the country and the UK. I can't thank those guests enough because they definitely helped me grow as a hiker. And I'm hoping that I can continue to connect with not just guests, but listeners in the community in the coming years with some backpacking trips or day hikes. Really want to try to schedule some of those out at least 3 or 4 times a year. That was my 2023 recap. Now, when it came to 2024, it started the same way. I went back to Vegas, but this time I skipped Valley of Fire and decided I was going to shoot for Cathedral Gorge State Park and Great Basin National Park. But I had an incredible experience at Cathedral Gorge State Park. And as soon as I started exploring the slot canyons and their labyrinths, I knew I wasn't going to make it up to Great Basin because I ended up spending most of the day at Cathedral Gorge. And I definitely recommend it. It's on the way to Great Basin. If you're traveling from Las Vegas, I think it's 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours north, but just another great state park that Nevada has. Definitely recommend it. And I want to go back because I stuck to the rock formations, and I know there's a couple trail systems that take you a little bit further out. So I'm hoping to make it back there and explore those trail systems. Another recommendation from gallivanting with Grant was Red Rock Canyon, and I was able to finally cross that off the list. That's only 30 minutes away from the Strip, if that, and equally as beautiful. Some amazing rock formations. Definitely recommend it if you're in Vegas and you just want to get a quick day hike in. And then in February, there's 3 people that really helped me develop my hiking club, Yakima Valley Trekkers. Interviewing Justin from Just Trek, he really planted the seed, as well as interviewing Justice from Connect and Hike, and then speaking with Jonathan from Outdoors Adventures Plus. They really helped plant the seed of doing a hiking club in my local community. They were able to answer my questions. They provided some amazing feedback and suggestions and tips and advice, and I can't thank those guys enough for their support. And in 2023, the idea of the hiking club was in the back of my mind, and I'd worked on it a little bit, but it wasn't until I went down for Just Trek and Outdoor Adventures Plus Star Wars themed hike in Simi Valley. This is the Way, episode 2. I instantly knew that I wanted to create this sense of community and do these group hikes in my local community. We ended up having, I think, 40 people on that Star Wars themed hike. And it was my first big group experience, and it was absolutely amazing. And not only was I able to finally meet Justin and Jonathan, but I invited Grant and Becca, I Am Becca, to this hike, and they came out. So I got to finally meet Grant in person. I got to meet Becca, and I got to hike with them. And it was just a really great experience and a great way to start off the year. And I think within a week of that hike, I had uploaded Yakima Valley Trekkers onto Meetup, scheduled 4 hikes, and really just got the ball rolling on developing my local hiking club here in Yakima Valley. Now, some other memorable highlights from 2024. I was able to do the solar eclipse. The 2024 solar eclipse, I ended up going to the Northeast. I rolled the dice on that one. I figured it wasn't going to be as crazy crowded as some of the places further south, like in Texas. I definitely knew that the weather might not let us see anything, but there was a really good deal on airfare, and we ended up pulling the trigger on it. And not only did we get a really beautiful, clear day for the solar eclipse, but I also got to cross off Acadia National Park. It wasn't fully open because there's still quite a bit of snow up on some of the higher elevation. So we just went around the park near the coastline. Beautiful park. Would love to make it back for the fall color season. I highly recommend traveling to see a full solar eclipse because it's definitely magical. For 4th of July, I ended up going to Victoria, British Columbia, and went for a concert, but I was there for a couple days, so we were able to explore the southern half of the island. And when people would describe it as the Hawaii of the Pacific Northwest, I didn't really get it, but it wasn't until I visited where I saw all the amazing gardens. When we were there, it was in the mid-80s, humid. It definitely felt like Hawaii weather. And I'm hoping to make it back there and explore the upper half of the island because I hear that's where some of the amazing coastlines and trails are accessible. On the way back, we stopped at Olympic National Park. Just did a quick day trip in there. Didn't really do too much hiking, but kind of wanted to get in the park, see it, and be sure to pin drop some special locations and trails for my next visit there. Like I mentioned, the new recording studio is only 2 pounds when I take it out on the trails, and one really memorable experience was recording with Blaine, who is Lost in Washington on Instagram. I got a hike with him and his buddy Marston, and we ended up doing Union Creek Falls, but the North Union Creek Falls. The more majestic one, the 80-foot waterfall that got me hooked into hiking, is only a mile in, but there is another set of waterfalls about 1.5 miles further up. But in 2017, there was the Norse Creek fire that swept through that area. And unfortunately, they haven't had a chance to have crews go out there and bring back that trail that led you to the North Union Creek Falls. There was a lot of blowdowns, and I got to give a special shout out to Blaine because having him help me navigate through the labyrinth of blowdowns made it a really enjoyable and fun experience. I would say the first mile in, it's not that bad, but there is a washout about 1 mile in. It's pretty deep, and that's where the blowdowns really get bad, where it's kind of pick your own adventure trying to find the original trail. But we made it. and got to see the North Union Creek Falls after, close to a decade since I last saw them. I did have an unexpected fail. There used to be a little walkway, a little bridge that helped you cross the creek in order to reach the second waterfall. And the fire took that out. So you kind of have to either walk through the creek or hopscotch across it. And I had my trekking poles and I was using them to pole vault my way across the creek. And I didn't have my left pole wrapped around my wrist. And it got lodged in a rock, and rather than falling into the creek, I let go of the stick, and unfortunately the creek took it and made it go over the 40-foot waterfall. It was not my proudest moment, but with the help of Blaine, we found a way to the base of that 40-foot waterfall. It was definitely dicey, but we were able to retrieve it, and I got to see that 40-foot waterfall like straight on, because normally you can only see it from the top, from the trail, but being able to reach the base of it in order to retrieve my pole was definitely a highlight of that trip. And Blaine is just an incredible hiker, an incredible guy. Now, towards the end of July, we had a wildfire breakout pretty close to home, and ultimately got to within a mile of where I live, and for the second half of summer, we were in this, I think, stage 2 evacuation zone, which is be prepared. I remember when it really started getting close to our community, charred bark was falling from the sky, not just ash, but like charred bark was falling down. It was still warm to touch. So there was a little bit of fear that one of these embers could hit a dry field and kind of start setting up blazes around our community. But the firefighters did an amazing job and stopped it from advancing to populated communities. And I can't thank them enough for what they did, and extremely thankful for their service. Now, that fire kind of made me change course on my hiking club. Originally, my goal was to switch between White Pass trail systems and Chinook Pass trail systems. But once the fire started, the White Pass trail systems weren't accessible for the rest of the summer. So it made me start exploring and looking in and around Chinook Pass and some of the other trail systems that I hadn't explored yet. And we ended up finding a really fun one that, to this day, a lot of the members, it was their favorite hike of the year, of the season, and that was Sheep Lake to Sourdough Gap near Chinook Pass. Yeah, just an absolutely beautiful hike, and it was the first one that wasn't in a wilderness area, so we didn't have to split up into smaller groups. We were able to stay together and enjoy the trail. Definitely wanted to back there, maybe even do some backpacking there, like an intro to backpacking weekend would be a good one. And then the last little highlight that I did want to share, it comes with a funny story. So this friend of mine who helped get me into hiking, who worked for the Forest Service, I don't remember where he pulled the entry, whether it was a PCT journal entry or a Washington Trails Association entry. Somebody back in 99 mentioned coming across this section of the PCT between Chinook Pass and Snoqualmie Pass, and coming across huckleberry fields or huckleberry patches that had huckleberries as big as grapes. That was like the journal entry, that they came across huckleberries that were big as grapes. Now he remembers working on a trail system that had the potential to have those type of huckleberry patches. Now, unfortunately, and we're not quite sure why, but the trail system that he worked on over a decade ago, going on 2 decades, isn't on any maps anymore. The one that we ended up doing, it's there. It's a multi-use trail. People can ride their dirt bikes or take out their horses. For some strange reason, it's not on any of the local maps. But anyways, we go out there, and the first huckleberry patch that we come across, it's been picked dry. Like, we maybe found a total of 15 huckleberries throughout the entire patch. And we were having a hard time believing that somebody would do the strenuous hike and pick all these huckleberries and then haul them back to their car. It wasn't until we came across the first giant anthill where we're pretty sure it wasn't individuals coming out there and picking and eating the huckleberries. It was these ants. Because there was at least 3 or 4 giant ant hills scattered across the huckleberry patch. And I think they just cleaned them dry. So we were a little disappointed. We figured we would go to this trail junction where the PCT and another trail system met up with the trail that we were on and see if there's any other huckleberries, because that one was a little bit more exposed. And as we started hiking towards the junction, we started coming across more huckleberry patches that still had quite a few huckleberries on them. And as soon as we got to the intersection of all these trails, we came across the gold mine. There was huckleberry patches all over the place. Now, they weren't as big as grapes, but they were big. And the goal was I was going to fill up my little backpacking cook pot with huckleberries because it wasn't too big. And I figured 30, 45 minutes I'd be able to fill it up. And if you ever have picked berries, it can be very slow going in order to fill up your container, especially huckleberries. So after 20 minutes of squatting and picking, I decided just to plop in the middle of the trail because we hadn't seen anybody the whole day. We just sit down and pick from either side and put some in the container, eat a few, 2 in the container, 2 for me type of deal. And I did that for maybe another 30 minutes, and I was getting pretty close to filling up my container when out of nowhere, PCT hiker comes around the corner and startled me, but I was such in a happy mood with finding this mythical patch that I just waved at her and offered her some huckleberries. She politely declined, but we got to talking. She was on the home stretch to finishing up the PCT. She probably only had a couple more weeks left before she reached Canada. Had a really great conversation with her, but I didn't notice how crazy I looked, especially to her, until after she left, and I noticed my hand was just covered in huckleberry juice. And I instantly thought, with my hands covered with huckleberry juice, I bet my lips and my mouth are covered in huckleberry juice because I had been eating them throughout the entire time I was there. So I took a selfie, and sure enough, my mouth was completely blue and purple from the huckleberries. And I instantly got embarrassed because I was like, oh my gosh, this poor PCT hiker probably hadn't seen anybody the entire day. And out of nowhere, she rounds a corner and there's this guy sitting in the middle of the trail that's eating huckleberries, that's completely covered in huckleberry juice, that waved at her and offered her huckleberries from his tin. And yeah, I still get embarrassed just saying it, but it was a hilarious story. And I'm pretty sure she probably had a good laugh, and she probably tells this story to people like, what's the most random thing you came across on the PCT trail? And it's me eating huckleberries like a damn bear. Yeah, that was a really great experience, and I'm hoping to make that part of the 2025 hiking season for Yakima Valley trekkers and be able to not be the only one eating huckleberries on that trail this time. And then towards the end of the year in 2024, I made it back to Hawaii to run the Honolulu 10K that's part of the Honolulu Marathon. Really great experience. Got to see all my old stomping grounds, kind of hit the ground running. Every single day, I made sure to catch sunrise as well as sunset. And I went to the east side, hiked Cocoa Head, went to Sherwoods, up to North Shore, went to the west side, Waianae. It was a great homecoming experience because Hawaii still very much feels like home. And to be able to reconnect with friends and family there was amazing. While I was there, I was purposeful to take a break from social media, and I was using it as a reset. And it did bring me some clarity where I knew I needed some help with the podcast because I was kind of stretching myself thin with not just the podcast, but also the hiking club and then my job. So I kind of started thinking of hiring somebody to help with the podcast and what that person could do to help support me and the podcast. And strange enough, at that same time that I'm thinking and, trying to figure out this role for this person, one of my regular members from the hiking club reached out, and she was going to do some contract work for the local paper. And she was wondering if she could interview me about the hiking club as her application or test run for a story for this publication. And I figured maybe she might be interested in doing some additional contract work. And she has a social media background, her 9-to-5, that's what she does. And so I kind of popped the idea to her, and she was interested. So we collaborated and came up with some responsibilities and tasks that she could help me out with. Yeah. In 2025, we were able to hire our first contract employee of the podcast. Her name is Jordan, and she's going to be helping with designing some of the social media graphics. So episode cover arts, the promo reels, the promo stories, as well as helping with research and helping develop questions for guests. Now it's still going to be me operating and managing the Instagram. So it'll be me that's commenting, that's messaging you. I don't have any plans right now of passing that responsibility to Jordan or to anybody else, but definitely she's been an incredible help already this season with helping do the episode cover arts and streamline the process in making sure we can promote each episode the same way week after week. Yeah. 2024 was another great year. Now for 2025, we started off the year with a bang. I had my first Yakima Valley Trekkers hiking planning meeting, and I had 30 individuals come out, and we have a really great blueprint for our 2025 hiking season. Mostly day hikes, but we do have some amazing folks that are interested in backpacking. So be on the lookout for that, because I'm thinking I'm going to invite some folks to participate in hiking and backpacking the Goat Rocks in Washington State. So be on the lookout for that later this year. I definitely want to go out and meet more community members, whether they're guests or just people that I follow and interact with on Instagram. I definitely want to continue in building those experiences that I was able to do in 2023 and 2024, and hopefully be able to schedule some group meetups throughout the year. Talking to Glenn Van Pesky, the founder of Gossamer Gear, and hearing his experiences of putting together a yearly trip where he just brings strangers together definitely resonated with me. I really enjoyed the experience up at Kolchak, and I'd want to recreate that in 2025. So I think, like many of you, my calendar for the next couple weeks is just full of lottery permit dates on when they open. So I'll be applying for a ton of permits through the lottery systems up and down the West Coast and Southwest. And hopefully I can hit on a few of them. And if I do, I'll definitely be reaching out to folks and seeing if anybody would want to join on some of these trips. Yeah, we have an incredible 2025 planned for the podcast. For season 9, we did, for the first time ever, go outside of Instagram for guests. We found some incredible individuals on Reddit who have done some incredible things. So be on the lookout for those episodes. I'm definitely excited to branch out and bring you some unique, incredible guests for 2025. I know that was a lot, but there was a few community questions that came through on Instagram. So I'll be answering that before we wrap it up with the this or that questions. The first one is, what good things have come out of doing your podcast that you didn't expect? I think how the community has grown over the last 2.5 years has been truly remarkable. Being able to meet guests in person has been a really great experience, and developing friendships through Instagram. Even though sometimes I haven't met those individuals, being able to develop a friendship through our hiking experiences has been great with a number of individuals, not just guests. But yeah, I would say the sense of community has been a really rewarding experience that came from doing the podcast. Next question was, after listening to so many adventures, has your bucket list changed? It definitely has. I think for me, I'll be honest, Ohio wasn't high on the destination list, but after speaking with some amazing individuals from Ohio, it's definitely a place that I want to explore. Hocking Hills is definitely high on my list, probably higher than the national park. And then I would say, Florida's on the radar. I know it has the Everglades, but I definitely want to see some of those crystal clear springs that I've heard and seen on Instagram, and then some of the national parks in and around the Caribbean. But one thing I am going to be doing in 2025 that has been number one on my bucket list for quite some time is visiting New Zealand. I'll be heading out there in April for 2 weeks, and I'll be exploring both the North and South Islands. One thing I think I've sprinkled throughout the seasons is that I'm a little bit of a Lord of the Rings fan. I'll definitely be visiting Hobbiton. I have a spreadsheet of all the places I want to hit, and now it's just making sure that it's doable. Like I said, the community has been amazing. There's a couple individuals who either live in New Zealand or have visited New Zealand, have offered their expertise. And once I kind of have a good agenda drafted, we're going to send that over and, make sure that I'm not overextending myself by saying, I want to do these 2 locations on the same day, not realizing that, the travel time isn't going to be the same as in the States. But yeah, definitely hearing people's stories and experiences throughout our public lands has definitely shifted my bucket list. The next question is, what's your favorite hike? I know I asked this question to a lot of guests, and it's definitely a hard one to answer. Like I said, Union Creek Falls will always be a favorite of mine. But I would say one that I try to do each year is Kolchak, and then also Eagle Creek Trail out in the Columbia Gorge. Those are 2 that, even though I've seen them, almost a dozen times, they are just spectacular each time. And each time I see things that I didn't see on previous hikes. So I would say those 2 for sure are high on the favorites. And then the last one is, are you taking a fishing rod with you on your hikes yet? Not a fishing rod, but I jerry-rigged a chalk line tool into a lightweight fishing setup. So I took off the hook that came with the tool and was able to add some weights and a fish hook to it. And I'm going to test that out this spring and see if I can carry that on my backpacking trips or even on my day hikes and be able to cast using that. But a telescoping rod is definitely high on the list as well. There was a couple lakes and rivers that I came across in 2024 that I definitely want to see if there's any fish that are lurking in the water. And then the questions that, I ask every single guest is there a regular summit routine or end of the hike routine? For me, since I started Yakima Valley Trekkers, it's the summit selfie. I normally take a picture of the group, but in order for me to be in the picture, I've started to take selfies. So I would say that has been a new tradition for me in 2024. As far as a luxury item, I would say outside of like my satellite communicator, the Yakima Valley Trekkers flag, I always carry that on our group hikes, and then my trail snacks. So I would say those 2 things are my luxury items. And then as far as hiking goals for 2025, there's a couple backpacking trips that I want to do. I'm hoping to hit some permits in the lotteries here in 2025 and getting out there and meeting community members. I think those are high on my list for 2025. Now, we're going to finish off with the updated version of the this or that questions. We did make some updates for season 9. The first one being, when it comes to trail snacks, do you prefer sweet or savory? And lately, I've been going savory, whether it's spicy Mexican candy or jerky. I kind of went hard on gummy worm than gummy snacks in the summer, and I got over them, took a break from them. So right now, I'm in my savory era for trail snacks. When it comes to waterfall or summits, I'm a waterfall guy through and through. And then when it comes to switchbacks or straight up, as much as I don't like switchbacks, I definitely will take switchbacks over a steep incline any day. Now, trek poles or freehand. I used to be team trek poles, and I still am, but I would say, especially in the winter months, I'm not using them as much. I'm still packing them, but I'm going on hikes that don't really have that big elevation change during the winter months, so I've been doing a lot of freehand lately. They'll be definitely coming back out come the spring and summer months. And for my footwear, trail runners or hiking boots, it's a mixture of both. So during the summer months, I'll kind of use trail runners unless I know there's going to be some uneven terrain that would be more ideal for hiking boots for the ankle support. I ended up buying the New Balance hybrid hiking boots and loved them. They were comfortable, they were great, but they didn't last more than 40 miles before the toe box started coming apart on one of them, and unfortunately I had to return them. That forced me to use my trail runners during the last bit of summer and the fall. I ultimately decided to go with the Hoka Anacapa 2 hiking boots. Really love them. They did have a little bit longer of a break-in period, but they've been rock solid ever since. So for my footwear, it's a little bit of both. Loop trails or out and back trails, I'm going to say out and back. One thing that I definitely notice is when I'm leading group hikes, I tend to be hyper-focused on the trail, not really hyper-focused to the details of the trail, if that makes sense. because I'm kind of focused on making sure we make our destination safely. And it isn't until we're heading back out where I'm starting to pick up details that I didn't necessarily see on the way in. So for me right now, I really like Counting Bikes. Another new one for season 9 is group hikes or solo adventures. And for me right now, it's a little bit of both. Our hiking club does about 2 hikes a month. On those off weeks where I don't have group hikes scheduled, I'll tend to go out solo and maybe scout out some places or just do some solo adventures on my own. So for right now, it's a mixture of both. And then sunset hikes or sunrise hikes. Now in Hawaii, like I said, I was doing both. And while sunrise is a great way to start the day, the colors that you get from sunsets are just incredible. So for that fact, I'm going with sunset hikes. And then spring wildflowers or fall colors. I'm a spring wildflower guy. I love the fall colors, but there's a literal and figurative buzz in the air when it comes to the spring wildflower season. And then the last one is steep climb or long distance. Right now, I'd definitely take a longer trail than a steeper one. So I'm going with long distance. And that was it for the this or that questions. I just want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for supporting the podcast, to all the amazing guests that we've had over the last 2.5 years. It has been an honor to not only hear your experiences, but also to be able to share it with the community. So I thank each and every guest that has come on the podcast and shared their experiences with us. To our listeners, thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for growing this podcast, especially in 2024. We hit our biggest listenership in season 8. So I can't thank you enough for your continued support. And to the amazing sponsors that we've had for quite some time that have supported us, and our new sponsors that we had in season 8. Thank you for your support. Thank you for always helping us promote the episodes. Ursa Minor Outfitters, thank you so much for your continued support. For those that are interested in incorporating hiking and a good cause, I'd recommend checking out the Ultimate Hike and seeing if there's a local or nearby Ultimate Hike that you can participate. I'm hoping to be able to participate in one in 2025. So maybe I'll put that on social media if folks want to join me for an Ultimate Hike in 2025. But yeah, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for all your support. I'm really excited for what 2025 has in store for not just the podcast, but for my own hiking experiences. Thank you so much and hope to see you on the trail. We have an incredible lineup of episodes planned throughout the winter months, and we can't wait to share them with you. New episodes will be dropping every Monday with occasional bonus episodes on Friday. To ensure you never miss out on these thrilling tales, remember to hit the like and subscribe button. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to check out our vibrant community on Instagram at Hikes and Mics. We'll be sharing episode visuals, my own personal hiking content, and so much more. Let's stay connected and continue to inspire each other on this remarkable journey. As we bid farewell, remember to tread those happy trails, embrace the great outdoors, and keep the spirit of adventure alive. Until next time, my fellow explorers, happy hiking. This episode's music was created by Ketsa. Follow him on Instagram at Ketsa Music. This episode is brought to you by Ursa Minor Outfitters. Folks, I'm absolutely in love with my loon mug. It's handmade. It's an absolute piece of art. Whether it's at the office or at the house, people keep asking to check it out. If you're not a loon fan, they also have other beautiful mugs for wildlife fans of moose, bears, and eagles. They specialize in products highlighting the outdoors and local pride through quality design by local artists. They've even started expanding into items beyond mugs, like apparel, dog accessories, and soon candles and more. They also try to partner and highlight other small businesses, and in some cases, forego profits in lieu of charitable giving to help their community, such as the dog rescue. So check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for our four-legged hiking partners, they also have a portable silicone dog bowl and also a sweet over-the-collar dog bandana. Go check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and don't forget to enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order.